Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. I have my fan on because it's hot in here and yeah, you will be hearing that in the background, but I'm going to be as quick as possible so that you don't have to hear it for long. Today I'm going to be filming my June wrap-up. I can't wait for this year to be over. I want it to be Christmas already, so yeah, I read 7 books, which was a really good number for me, and I'm excited to share my thoughts on the books that I read and know some of yours. So yeah, let's get started. I wanted to talk about first, I read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I really enjoyed this book. I think it's a good kind of sort of beginner's guide, or kind of if you're first reading about racism, kind of educating yourselves. So I think that I was pretty, I'm not saying that I'm super educated, but I was aware of the facts, and I'm constantly seeing what's going on in the United States with the Black Lives Matter movement. So I just kind of wanted a book that could kind of put into words and be more, I don't know, just educational, I guess. However, I do want to make very clear that this book is written by a white woman, and that the book was made kind of by a white woman for white people. So I don't think that this is the only book that you should read, and I am definitely going to be reading more non-fiction about racism from Black authors. So yeah, I read that as part of the there was a readathon going on in the month of June, and yeah, it was about that book and about White Rage. I could not read White Rage because I was looking for them both in my library, and White Rage was on hold. So I have that book on hold, so I will be reading it shortly. So yeah, I read that. Again, I found it very insightful. However, I want to say that don't just read this book and say that you have read about racism. Look more, read more, educate yourself more. So yeah. Then I picked up Aurora Rising by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I enjoyed this book, I guess, to a degree. It's, again, sci-fi isn't really my thing. However, I did enjoy some of the characters. We get to follow Aurora. She is a girl who was part of this mission to colonize this other planet, I believe. And she goes on this ship with a bunch of people, and sadly there is an accident, and she is the only person who survives. However, she wakes up 200 years after this accident, and is found by this dude called Tyler Jones, and we basically get to see them kind of figure out what happened to this colony that they were supposed to go to, and that now has suddenly disappeared. I'll read the second one. It's not, I don't know, the best thing, it's not the worst thing. It was alright. Then I read, let me see. I read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book, as I mentioned in my mid-year book freakout tag, is one of my favorite books of the year, if not ever. It follows Xiomara. She is an incoming freshman at a high school, and we basically get to see her struggle as it's kind of rethinking some of the things that she has learned from her family, and kind of learning new things, and it's just being a teenager and exploring romance and what she wants to do with her life. All of these things. It's a great book. I related so much to it, especially because the main character is Hispanic. She is from the Dominican Republic. I am not Dominican, I am Puerto Rican, but I just felt like I connected to so many elements of this story, and I enjoyed it so much. And yeah, it's written in verse, and it deserves every single award that it got. It's brilliant. Then I read Sulla by Toni Morrison. This is another book that I really enjoyed and that I also talked about in my mid-year book freakout tag. This one follows Nell and Sulla. They both grow up in this town called The Bottom, which is a black community, and basically it's kind of looking at the differences in how each of these girls were brought up and how their upbringing kind of shapes where they end up in life. It's wonderful. I cannot wait to read more about Toni Morrison, and part of me wishes that this book was longer because the exploration of these characters was so fascinating, and just really thinking about what is right, what is wrong, and how each of these women are labeled, and you kind of get to see how it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I really want to make a review about this book so that I can discuss the spoilers in more detail because it's just great and amazing. Then I read The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This was a very disappointing read. It basically is supposed to be a retelling of the whole Achilles Greek myth, and I guess it was supposed to be from the perspective of women. However, I mean, it was literally that. It was the story of Achilles from the perspective of a woman. So we're constantly talking about Achilles and seeing Achilles and exploring his morality and his story. And yeah, sure, we kind of get to see a little bit of the women in the story and what they're dealing with, but we really don't get to explore much of it in depth. So yeah, it was disappointing. And I want to unhaul this, so yeah. Then I read a really sad book, which was The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. This is the story about Elwood. He is kind of a senior in high school and he's about to go to college, and sadly he gets wrongly accused of stealing a car, I believe, or being or helping someone steal a car. And he is sent to this kind of reformatory school called, I forgot, the Nickel Academy. And basically the premise of this school is that they take kids who have been involved in criminal activity or are just a bit, I don't know, they have bad conduct, and they keep teaching them, they keep their education going, but they also help them kind of become better people. However, this school is far from that, and the way that kids are treated and punished in this school is horrible, and especially black kids were just living in the most horrible conditions. And what strikes me the most is the fact that this was actually a real school and that this story is inspired by real events. The school was in Florida and it closed in 2011, and I think the most heartbreaking thing is that when the school closed, they were investigating basically the perimeters of the school, and they found about 100, I think, bodies of children, and most of them showed signs of violent deaths. So it's heartbreaking. It's a heartbreaking story, but I think that it's a necessary one for us to see, and for us to really understand that these atrocities still continue to happen in many different ways. So yeah, heartbreaking, but very necessary. Then I read Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I enjoyed this book to a degree, not as much as The Poet X. I feel like The Poet X will be my favorite book from her always. This book basically follows the story of Camino and Yahaira, and they are both, Camino lives in the Dominican Republic and Yahaira lives in New York, but what they have in common is that they have the same father, and they kind of know about each other after their father dies in an airplane crash that happened while the father was traveling from New York to the Dominican Republic. And we basically get to explore how these women are trying to deal with the fact that their father Although he was many wonderful and good things and an excellent father to them, he had a double life, and how that kind of changes their perception of him. So it's a great book. I love the exploration of the different lifestyles of each of these women, what are the things that they deal through in their lives, and how they kind of have anger towards each other despite the fact that they haven't even met. It's a really great book. It's just that I didn't enjoy it as much as The Poet X. So yeah, those were all the books that I read during the month of June, and let me know if you have enjoyed any of these books, what you have thought about them, and yeah, I will see you guys with the next video. Bye.